Okay, so how are each of these houses supposed to be elected? So the lower house, which you could sort of equate in your mind to the House of Representatives, would be elected every 2 years by the people and would be proportional to the population of each state. Okay, so it would, like all of us, the regular folk of North Carolina, we would vote on who we wanted to be our representatives in the House of Representatives, like we do today. Every 2 years, we would vote on them. Then the state government would nominate members for the upper house, and the lower house would choose them. So then the state government, so meaning whoever our state Congress is and our governor, whoever, would nominate 2 people to serve as the Senate, and then the members of the lower house, the members of the House of Representatives, would then vote on who they wanted to be in the Senate. So a little different from how we do it today. So the legislature, so Congress, would also choose who was in the executive branch and who was in the judicial branch. So the Congress would choose who the president was, essentially, and they would also choose who was sitting on the Supreme Court. So very different from what we have today. So you see what I mean when I said that the legislature would sort of be the centerpiece of the government. So a combination of executive and judicial branch members would have to act together to undo anything that the legislature had done. Meaning, if Congress passed a bill that the executive branch didn't like, today the president can veto it. But under the Virginia plan, the president would have to he would have to agree with some members of the judicial branch. So with some judges, they would together have to veto something. So a little more complicated than what we've got going on in reality now. The smaller states didn't like this plan. They were worried about constantly always being outvoted, which is understandable. If everything is essentially based on population, then the bigger states would have more power in Congress, and whoever has more power in Congress would essentially have all the power, because that's who's electing the person in charge of the executive branch and who's electing who's in charge of the judicial branch. So the smaller states favored the other plan, which we call the New Jersey plan. It was written by William Patterson, who was one of the representatives from New Jersey. Had a lot of the same features as the Articles of Confederation. Okay, it just a couple of things were different. One thing is that it gives extra power to Congress. A few things that Congress didn't have before, like being able to levy taxes and things like that. Under the New Jersey plan, there is a unicameral legislature. So one house of Congress, right? And in that Congress, every state would get only one vote. So everybody gets the same say. So state governments, state governments would elect legislative members and choose 2 or 3 executive members and judges for the Supreme Court. So the state of North Carolina would choose who they wanted to be their representatives in Congress, and choose who they wanted to be in the executive and judicial branch. So the states would have a lot more power here, you see. The executive branch had no veto power, but it's a plural executive. What I mean by that is we wouldn't just have one president. Okay, we would have had more than one person taking up that role. So it did grant the government the additional authority to tax and regulate foreign trade, established the laws of Congress as the supreme law of the land, so saying everybody has to, enforce these laws whether or not they want to. Gives the executive branch a little more power here. So still not much more than a revision of the Articles of Confederation. So a lot of people don't really like this plan. They don't think that it does enough, because we already know that the Articles of Confederation were essentially worthless. But at the same time, not everyone will agree to the Virginia plan, because they see the Virginia plan as basically giving the big states all the power. So they're arguing back and forth between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. Eventually, things get so heated that several delegates leave the convention, because they say they don't even want to replace the Articles of Confederation. They only want an amendment, and they didn't want to make a central government too powerful. They don't want to take any rights away from the people. The governor of New York even just stormed out of the convention. People are leaving. So most of the delegates favor the Virginia plan, but remember, every state here only gets one vote, and it doesn't matter, if Virginia has 20 different delegates at the convention, the state of Virginia only gets one vote. So they knew they were going to have to make some compromises in order to satisfy these smaller states like Delaware, Massachusetts, Connecticut, these places. So they're debating and arguing. Larger states start to hint at leaving the union altogether, basically saying, if we can't agree to this, maybe we should just break apart and we'll do our own thing. So people start to panic. This is getting really out of control, that we can't come up with any sort of compromise. So finally, what we decide on is the Great Compromise, right? AKA the Connecticut Compromise. So it's going to be written by this guy over here, Roger Sherman, who was a delegate representing Connecticut, and we will talk about the Great Compromise tomorrow or on Monday. We'll go over exactly what that all entails on Monday. So this is where we will stop today.